Welcome back to Making a Murder, my journal, and I want to thank you for watching all the videos and coming back to join me. Today we're going to focus on the 3 unsolved homicides that were in Manitowoc County and how are they connected. So I'm sure you're familiar with this picture here of this lady on the bottom. This would be Teresa Halbach. She was reported missing 11/3/05, approximately 2:32 p.m. by her mother, Karen Halbach. Now, 5 miles away on the exact same day, this is Carmen Botwell, and she was found dead in her apartment at 8:30 in the morning on 11/3/05. You have the 2 girls. One is reported missing later in the afternoon, but in the morning, 5 miles away in Mishcot, you find Carmen Botwell dead in her apartment at 8:30 in the morning. And then we're going to also dig into the rabbit hole as to Ricky, who was a hit-and-run victim that was killed in 1999 by an unidentified driver, and that rabbit hole somehow seems to connect all 3 of them. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to research this and find out what does the evidence lead us and how is it all related. So let's get in it right away. We're going to do, these are going to be a little bit longer segments, and we're going to break them up so that they're a little bit more digestible. So part 1 is going to focus mostly on Carmen. However, it will show eventually here how it does relate to both of the other victims. So on the left, we have Carmen Botwell, and on the right, we have Teresa Halbach. Now, Carmen wears glasses. Other than that, they're the same height, same weight, same stature. They've got short brownish hair or a little blondish. Both have brown eyes, little button noses, and they look very similar. If you took off Carmen's glasses and you really didn't know these 2 girls that great, I think they could possibly be mistaken for the other. And just another picture. And why are we even thinking that? Well, this is just absolutely amazing. So this is a defendant's amended motion to issue subpoena. And it was a subpoena was given to Barb and Scott Tadich. Why? Well, let's go into this. It is regarding no other than Carmen Botwell's overdose and cremation. So do not ask me why Scott Tadich and Barb would be asked this information, but this is how it went. So Zellner went over and she interviewed Scott and Barb Tadich regarding Carmen's remains. And then the law enforcement in Manitowoc County wanted to know what they had said to Miss Zellner. So they subpoenaed them and asked them. And so let's get into this. It's talking about the overdose. And it says, Barbara stated Carmen was cremated and Carmen's parents had to wait approximately 1 month to get Carmen's cremains. Scott stated he was asked if he would be willing to provide the parents' phone number to attorney Zellner. Scott also indicated that the family was willing to give Carmen's cremains to an attorney Zellner to test against what ashes had been recovered. So recap that. Zellner was asking for the phone number of Carmen Botwell's family. And the family, according to Scott Tadich, is saying, yeah, they'll give up the cremains to you, Zellner. And then it's being stated that she wants to test them against the remains found at the Avery case. So she's also got questions about the remains possibly matching Carmen Botwell's. Let's dig in. That's interesting. So could Carmen Botwell and Teresa Halbach be related? That's the first question that we asked years ago. And we did find a relation. There's 13 steps. You go from Teresa Halbach, 13 steps later, you've got Carmen Botwell. And in there, it does appear they are related, most likely second cousins. But Halbach to Muhlenbach, to Casper, to Schmitz, to Sukawati, to Botwell. So it does appear they are related. And a relation's very important when they only have 7 loci. If it would have been a 13 match, but 7 loci does not mean that that is even a sibling. That just means they could be related. Let's jump to this Calumet County Sheriff's Department report. We've got Uyghur and Deering, and they are at Karen Halbach's residence, and they're interviewing her. Now, this is February 18, 2005, approximately 1:30. And it says, I asked Karen if she had any other deceased children. Karen stated, other than Teresa, she does not have any other deceased children. Karen also told us that her mother, Dorothy S. Is still alive. However, she is in poor health. Karen also stated she does not have any nieces that are deceased, and she only has one aunt who would be deceased who is buried in Schofield, Wisconsin. What? Why are they asking the mother of the deceased if she has other female deceased relatives or siblings of Teresa? Again, they are looking for something specific. Why are they asking her that? So, there's a friend of the family of Carmen Botwell's that has been able to make some statements for us. She doesn't answer everything, but she does give us some statements. And I have found that a lot of her statements do get backed up by court documents. And so I'm going to leave the statements as we go through with you to be the judge. However, I will show you what I can that backs up these statements to be true. But this is her statement. She was asked, what was Carmen Botwell doing leading up to October 31st, 2005? And she replied, prior to October 31st, 2005, CB, meaning Carmen Botwell, had met with law enforcement days prior to her death. Her grandmother had driven her to an out-of-the-way place location where they met L.E. and CB in the back seat of L.E.'s car, refusing to tell them what they wanted to hear. She was nervous and anxious about the meeting. So L.E. meaning law enforcement. Okay. She goes on to say, on the day of October 31st, 2005, CB's family tells me that she was attending school in prep to attend college, and she had come home for lunch that day and spoke with her mom about what she was doing on Halloween. CB loved Halloween, and she loved shelling out the candy to the local kids. She told her mom that she was staying home that night and would look forward to her mom stopping by with her little brother in costume. Unfortunately, she never spoke with her again and did not make it over that night to see her. So here's a parallel again. It's like a mirror. Teresa is seen by her family last on October 31st, but has plans with them later and they don't see her. Same situation. Carmen Botwell has plans with her family on October 31st and does not see them. Both girls never seen after the exact same night. So what do we have that backs up this story? Well, we do have Carmen M. Botwell, and this is a Sheboygan County case. It's filed 8/15/2005, so in August. And it goes on to say it's a traffic forfeiture, gives the address. Now, I boxed that because her obituary contradicts this. It actually reports it as the same address, but instead of it saying 1214 South 19th Street, Sheboygan, it says Manitowoc. But she actually lived in Michigan, I believe. Anyway, so, oh yeah. Her appearance on this one was 9/7/2005, and her license plate number, Vile Van. I can't make this up for you guys. Vile Van was her license plate number. And if you look down here on the charge description, it's a hit-and-run, unattended vehicle. So she wasn't driving the vehicle, but it made contact, and apparently she has fled the scene. And then it goes on, and it dates it 4/17/2008. Now, this would have been approximately 2.5 years after her death. It says, return of unclaimed, undelivered mail service. Judgment for unpaid fines. Excuse me, the court case was closed, I believe. Number 2, she was listed as deceased in 2005. So why are they continuing to try to get her to pay these fines? Oh, wait. 5/15/2006, again, after her death, months and months after her death, we're talking 6 months, suspension of driver's license for failure to pay. Really? Here's another report. This is referring to Carmen, and it says, defendant in custody on arrest warrant. The matter, and it's all related to this hit and run, by the way. The matter is continued for an initial appearance on 10/17/05 at 2:30. Bail is set at $1,000. Recognizance bond, can't say that word, with the condition that the defendant have no contact with Gary Cree. I don't know who he is, but we should dig into that. But right now, let's stick to this. So we go 5/10/17/2005. Preliminary hearing is set for 10/26/05 at 8:30. And then it looks like they appoint counsel. And then 10/25/06, they get into a meeting and they say that the review will be set for 10/3/05 at 8:30 in the morning. 10/3/05, 8:30 is exactly the date, the time, down to the minute that Carmen Botwell was found dead. And it boggles the mind. Really. All right. So if you look at this, it goes on to break it down. I do supply some of these cases here. The complication is when you enter these, you're going to find out that a lot of these documents are sealed now. A couple of years ago, before MAM 2, I believe that those were all open and we were able to view them. And a lot of us did screenshots or saved them. Unfortunately, now the records have been sealed. Great question as to why they would seal Carmen Botwell's public records. But let's go down here. Notice entering October 2005. Review is set for November 3rd, 2005, 8:30. Again, this is going back to the lady that's given her statement for us. And she says on November 3rd, 2005, at approximately 8:30 a.m., CB is found dead. CB lived in an upstairs apartment and her grandmother lived downstairs. CB's grandmother had gone upstairs and knocked on the door to wake CB, and she did not get an answer. A few minutes later, an unknown female alerted CB's grandmother that CB may be dead. Stop there. Unknown female. Interesting. All right, let's continue. The grandmother went upstairs where she found CB sitting on the floor, leaning against the stereo and unresponsive. Wow. MSCO was contacted and responded. Conversations between MSCO and CB's family immediately ensued, and her family was told she had OD'd. How would they know that? They had not even had an expert on to look at her. So this is the house they're referring to. It's in Manitowoc, and it's at the 1214 South 19th Street. So that upstairs would be where they had found Carmen. And that is listed right there on her obituary. I'm sorry it's blurry. It's a newspaper clipping from an archive. And interesting. So it is possible that Ellie was sitting in those cop cars because of the fact that we have in the Steve Avery case where that county does interview people in squad cars. And it does sound like CB was having license issues. So that would make sense why Grandma is driving her. But let's go on to find out. Now, because that was so blurry, I went and got the actual obituary out of the Herald Times reporter. And it's a little bit clearer. It goes on to say exactly the same thing. But I underlined something here so that we know the time. So it says, funeral services will be held at 1 p.m. Tuesday, November 8, 2005. It lists the church. And then go ahead, jump down. It says cremation will follow service. So cremation would happen after 1 p.m. All right. Let's go on. So we're back to the lady that's been talking to us that's a family friend. And she states that on November 4th, 2005, because MSCO had removed the same coroner that would be walled off from the SA case. Let's stop right there. Same coroner. This is Deb K. She was the coroner for Manitowoc County. She was not involved in the original case in 1985. However, she was walled off or barred from any of the bones or remains that were allegedly found over in the Steve Avery case. And she was even threatened to be arrested. Now, this lady is telling us that she was also, Deb K., the coroner, was also pulled off of Carmen Botwell's autopsy. So she started the autopsy and was unable to finish it because they pulled her off. So it goes on to say, CB was driven 2 hours drive to Waukesha County Morgue. Her autopsy was done by a DPKMD forensic pathologist and TH forensic autopsy assistant. The autopsy was done November 4th, 2005. The autopsy report shows her organs were shown as normal. That is not indicative to someone who is a quote-unquote druggie, along with the low numbers showing of the methadone and the alcohol. What is questionable is the mention of markings and their locations, and that she was more apt to have died from suffocation/strangulation rather than OD. During the autopsy, tissues and samples were taken and stored, and also there was a DNA card made for her. Now, I understand the DNA card made for her is because it's a homicide. I understand. But the fact that that card was sitting there, available to the exact same law enforcement officers that are investigating the TH case. I mean, Colburn's the one that responds over to Carmen Botwell. Wiegert and Dietering are also involved in that case. And because Wiegert is directly involved and Rimiker is involved because it's law enforcement that are dealing with an overdose. Okay? So it makes no sense to me why that DNA card would have not been brought up in this case to compare it to clear it out, other than the Denny law. So let's go on to read some more. So it goes on to say Manitowoc County Sheriff's officers immediately discussed that they would assist the family with the funeral arrangements. The families had paid for CB's funeral. Stop right there. So that clears it up. She's stating that the family did pay for Carmen's cremation. However, Manitowoc County guides them in choosing the funeral home. And here it is. However, even before CB's body was removed from her apartment, MCSO told the family that they should have her cremated. They advised the family that an autopsy would be done immediately and that they would help with the arrangements for the cremation. What do they mean by arrangements? They're picking the funeral home, you guys, and they specifically are guiding where she is getting cremated. The autopsy was completed November 4th, and CB's funeral was November 8th. Her family remembers placing her in the back of the hearse shortly after 1 p.m. on the 8th, where she was taken to be cremated. It took 3 weeks for her cremains to be returned to the family. CB's family questioned her death a few times to LE and were told that she was a drug addict and to get over it, and that finding her killer was virtually impossible. LE never investigated CB's suspicious drug death. MSCO stated in the news article that the case was still open. And I believe it was Rimiker that was quoted, it would be like a needle in a haystack. Now, who says that if the person OD'd? That is uncouth, and honestly, I can't make this stuff up. So, let's go over this a little bit. Now, there is an error in this report. It actually says TH 530. It would have been 232. But let's go over this. So, on the 3rd of November 2005, we have CB, 8:30 a.m. found dead. TH, correction, 2:32 p.m. reported missing. Steve Avery, 6:34 p.m. listed as murder suspect. So, TH is missing for like an hour and 4 minutes, and they've 64 minutes she's missing. They don't know where she is, and they've already got it in their head she was murdered. Okay. Carmen funeral 11/8, then cremated. Bones found on Avery property 11/8. Funeral 1 p.m. on the 8th. Bones found 1:30. Sifting started 3 p.m. November 8th. Stop right there. So that makes it appear as though Carmen was actually cremated after the bones were found on Avery property. But I beg to differ. And that's where we're going to show you that as we go through this series. And that's just something we'll have to get to. Oh boy. Okay. SA arrested 11/9. TH death certificate 11/10. So this is again her obituary. And what funeral home did Manitowoc County choose? The Pfeiffer Funeral Home. And that is in Manitowoc, and it's assisting with family funeral arrangements. Why did they choose Pfeiffer Funeral Home? Well, let's find out. I believe it's because of this. Miss Ann Pfeiffer, now her family owns the funeral home, and she marries Michael J. Bushman. And if you look down here, he is a traffic officer with the Manitowoc County Traffic Department. Thank you for the news clipping. So, Bushman is involved so deeply in this, you guys. He is one of the original arresting officers with the assault on the beach that took place. Okay? Yeah. And his wife owns a funeral home that Carmen was cremated at at the direction of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. So here's where it explains, this is Steve Avery's, where they're arresting him. And it goes into the report, and it says, Officer Bushman and Duke would stay on the perimeter. All right. And then it says, Stephen was escorted to an unmarked squad and placed in the back seat of the squad car, and seatbelt was put on. Sergeant Peterson transported him to the sheriff's department, and he was followed by Officer Bushman and Duke. Right there you have it. Bushman, Deputy Bushman, arresting officer for Stephen Avery. So who is Bushman? Well, Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. Here's a picture of him. You can see that's Michael Bushman and a dog, Duke, because he runs the K-9 unit for Manitowoc County. He's a traffic officer, but he's got that K-9 unit as well. And this would be prior, just very shortly prior to the arrest of Steve Avery. Bushman named top officer. Officer Mike Bushman, left K-9 handler from Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, has been named the Outstanding Officer of the Year by the Manitowoc Eagles area, or I don't even know how to say that, 706 at their annual benefit. Interesting. So, this is what I'm about to wrap this up, and then we'll get into part 2, where we're going to dig into, oh boy, a lot of information that is just going to blow your mind. But let's recap here. We've got the last statement here. The bones were found on November 8th, delivered to Eisenberg's office. She says November 9th, Eisenberg had gone over the weekend, and her first day back to work was November 10th. Here is her testimony on direct by Felon A. When I opened the box on Thursday, November 10th, stop right there. How is her being gone over the weekend till the 10th, Thursday? That's not the weekend, that's the week. So she's actually not available till Thursday, November 10th at Dane County Coroner's Office Morgue, where I do most of my laboratory. I opened the box to find many blackened, highly fragmented, and incomplete human bone fragments. So right there, I'm telling you, I don't care what they say they found. They had zero documentation, no photographs on the Steve Avery property or in the Barb Janda burn barrel or in the quarry. Not a photograph with all those experts available. They decided not to document where the bones came from. And now it doesn't matter when they say they found them, because the one person that needs them didn't get them till the 10th. And that means they had from the 8th at 1:30 p.m. to cremate Carmen Botwell. It takes 2 to 2.5 hours to cremate. It takes another 2 hours to use the magnets to go through to remove metal and put it through the grinder so that it turns it into ash. I suggest they did not put it through the grinder. They left those raked bones that came right out of that basket from the cremator as they were. And they were not given until November 10th. So we have 2 days from Carmen, her entire cremation process, her funeral, full open casket, doesn't matter. The bones were not actually given to someone and put into evidence until the 10th. Now we know for a fact that Bushman was one of the arresting officers. And now he shows up out of retirement. He finds the bones over there on Steve Avery's property and in the quarry with Joust. And they take this box, undocumented where they came from, and gives them on the 10th. So, there you have it. I want to thank you all for joining me on that. We are going to dig way, way deeper. We have not even touched the surface of this astounding information. It's quite easily seen that could be done. I can see where Zellner's actually asking for this comparison now. Makes a lot more sense as to why Dietering and Wiegert are asking for any other relative information. it just all puts it together. Seven Loki, they were not as comfortable, and they were looking literally for bones. Did they find him with Carmen? Join me again as we dig deeper into this rabbit hole for the next few parts to this series. Thanks for joining me. Hit that like button. Please subscribe if you want to have updates, and hang in there. As I always say, if you didn't do the time, you shouldn't do the crime. Oh, if you didn't do the crime, you shouldn't do the time. Thanks, guys. Bye.